It's time for the Giants Baseball Corner Monday Morning Report with your host, the Giants recovered from losing 3 straight last week by taking 3 from the Rockies over the weekend. Good. It was a 4-game series. We lost that first one on Thursday night. We ought to have swept them. We need to beat the bad teams in order to stay in the running with the billionaire bums and the Padres. That's just the fact of it. I expect the Snakes to turn it around too. Lavulo knows how to do it. In fact, let's jump in the skip back a couple of years machine, okay? And let's talk about those 2023 Arizona Diamondbacks, right? They came out of the gate looking really good that year, and then, they had their best month was May. They smoked everybody in May, and they were in first place in the NL West in May, right? April and May were their 2 best months in 23. And then they just took a dive in like July and August, right? They were like even 4th in the division in August that year, right? And they ended the season 84-78, 16 games back of the Dodgers in second place in the NL West and in the postseason. All right? That's how they ended that, 23. 84-78, 16 games back of the Dodgers, right? And then went to the World Series, right? So Tony Lavulo and that crew know how to do it. And that is the model we need to be looking at. Are we already looking at it? Have we already advanced that model? I think so, a little bit. We're not going to win the NL West, okay? We may not even come in second, but rather third. In which case, we'd probably be playing the Padres in the wild card, like we did that year when we played the Dodgers, right? Going 107, the winningest year ever. We might end up playing them in the wild card. Now, the Diamondbacks that year were hot at the beginning. They were terrible in July and August, and then they did just enough to take second in the division in September and October, okay? So the model is that you stay in it, right? You stay in the race enough to make it to the trade deadline, and then you add critical pieces to make a run. The Snakes added Tommy Pham from the Mets and the reliever Paul Sewald. Okay, Sewald played a key role in the Diamondbacks' run. He pitched 8 consecutive scoreless innings in the, wild card DSCS, and only gotten beaten by Bochy's guys. The Rangers finally plated runs against this guy. But the Sewald pickup was critical, right? It was like what we did when we won, right? Adding Cody Ross and Mark Fontenot in 2010, right? And then adding Hunter Pence and Scudero in 2012, Marco Scudero, right? So it's to be in it at the trade deadline, then make the right moves, add the right pieces, and then shoot the gap. Because the billionaire bums have spent all the money. They've doubled our payroll. We're now 9th in payroll. I will be checking payroll during the season. And because even though I talk about us like a mid-market team, like the Brewers or the Reds or whomever, they're spending less than we are. So we haven't crept out of the top 10, even though the bums have spent twice what we've spent. Okay? Payroll-wise. This is the Monday Morning Report. You are in Giants Baseball Corner. The time is 8:34. So what are we talking about here? Well, first, let's not underestimate the value of the wins we are picking up here in April and May. With the NL West being dominated by the billionaire bums, every win is, relatively speaking, meaningful to the pursuit of the postseason. We have to grab a wild card like we did in 2021, like the Snakes did in 2023. Second, we need to grow a team that plays the way those Diamondbacks did. Impeccable defense. We're doing very well. But I'm talking impeccable defense. Because the bums don't make mistakes, and they turn it on in innings. So impeccable defense, aggressive batting and base running, right? To force them into mistakes. The idea is you want your opponent on their heels, not on their toes. You want them on their heels in a way. And the way you do that is with this crazy, aggressive running on the base paths, bunting, sacks, unexpected moves, steals. All these things create, and it makes conditions for the opponent to have to not make mistakes on their own, right? And then you've got to take advantage of the mistakes that they make, right? This little three-part thing is something we've been talking about before as the elements of what we've been calling small ball, okay? And the third thing is we need to be in it enough, okay, to be able to add the perfect elements at the trade deadline for the stretch run. And that is where Buster Posey comes in. I hope and assume, because what I've seen so far is a guy who gets it, right? And so he will have to evaluate our current staff in July and make the calls that turn us into champions, all right? So win-loss is different for us in these years when the billionaire bums have spent so much and they dominate payroll, right? But having said that, the Giants are keeping pace with the two top teams in the NL West, and with a record that matches the Mets, right, on the other side, who are in first place in the NL East, we sit in third in the NL West. We are a game and a half back of the Bums and a half a game off the Padres, who won yesterday. It's a good position to be in, under the radar and hanging around with intention. Our squad goals have to be perfecting our game, working incessantly at reducing errors, gaffes, slips of the mind or body. At the managerial level, Bob Melvin is already taking an aggressive approach to base running, particularly in the early innings. It has led to some easy outs as guys learn the rhythm of base stealing, but it has to be done now in spring so we can do it effectively at the end of the season when it matters most. We've got to put the billionaires on their heels, unable to get on their toes, because they are not in control of the game. That's how they destroyed their competition if you watch those games, by projecting control over every situation in a game with their stacked lineup, The Giants beat a bad team this weekend, okay, handily. We need to continue to do that. We also need to remain competitive against better competition and against the American League, as we have done already in New York and against the Rangers. That was good. We have to small ball some pretty big ballers. We're not the only ones doing this. We got a very good look at two teams that are mid-payroll that do it well. Milwaukee is excellent at this, and the Reds are coming up. Both teams are like 19th, 18th in spending, by the way. We spend a lot more than these guys, okay? But we can learn from and take lessons from the other teams that are using these tactics. A good example of something we have been doing intuitively for years in San Francisco that is now being defined for general use is the idea of leveraged-based bullpen management, okay? That's the music that says we got to wrap it up, but I kind of want to talk about this leveraged-based bullpen management. I guess we'll have to save that for Friday's report. You might want to look into it, but I think we've been doing that. It's something that plays to our strengths, takes advantage of the modern sabermetrics, and it's pretty cool. So I want you to check that out. I'll put a link to the video I watched about this. It's simple sabermetrics on YouTube. I'll put that in the description. Giants have an excellent bullpen. By the way, Lou Trevino, who you might have seen him last night, has been DFA'd, and Kyle Harrison will be put into the pen as a reliever. So it'll be Harrison on the mound in leveraged situations against the Cubs and the Minnesota Twins. We're headed off on the road for a week now. The Cubs are red hot, by the way. The Twins are in fourth in the AL Central, but they're coming off they just won a series in Boston. They took 2 out of 3 at Fenway this weekend. Finally, I have to do the disclaimer. This is Giants Baseball Corner. This website may contain copyrighted material, the use of which has not explicitly been authorized by the copyright holder. This is a news program in the sports category that covers current and live events in progress. Any copyrighted material being used is for educational purposes and intended to be transformative. This use falls under the fair This use falls under the fair use guidelines outlined by Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act, specifically for purposes of criticism, comment, and news reporting. If such content is used, all rights remain with the original copyright owners. All attempts are made to give credit where it is due in live broadcasts. Failure to do so is the host's fault alone. Ran a little long. This has been the Monday Morning Report from Giants Baseball Corner with your host,